in the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty. So say we all foreperson.
The George Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case. I said it was just like this case, but with a video. And obviously, there are some real similarities, but some stark differences between the two cases, okay? So it's not exactly the same. Of course, it's not exactly the same. But some of the similarities is you look at the way it all began. It began with some residents in a neighborhood who were concerned about some prior alleged incidents. They see someone who they believe is responsible for those, and then they call 911, and then they start to follow that person with their car, okay? Very similar, very, very similar, okay? But then things kind of go this way, right? There's more than one person involved. It appears that the guns are drawn from the beginning. 3 people somehow involved in tracking him. 2 arrested for the murder. But let's talk about that case and this case and the real differences. There's one person you bring in to talk about it, and that's the man who successfully represented George Zimmerman and got that verdict that you just saw. Mark O'Mara joins us tonight. Great criminal defense attorney, does a lot of other work as well. Mark, great to see you.
Great to be back, Vinny. How you doing?
Let me start here. Great. And I've been asking everyone this because I think it's the most important question. When you see the video, the first video that was released, the shooting death of Ahmaud, what do you see?
We try so hard not to jump to conclusions, and Vinny, you and I have talked about this a lot. Wait until it all comes out. But nobody can look at that video and suggest that this was anything else but a setup. Cops or people who are acting as cops deciding to act on their own. They made misassumptions from the beginning. And I know that I'm hearkening back to a case you and I have talked about. They made a misassumption to beginning, but the way that they acted towards Ahmaud, evidence to me, pure hatred towards him, pure predisposition, pure bias. And for whatever reason, they were not going to let him pass and ended up killing him, murdering him to do so.
So, all right. So I was, initially I said, this is just like the Trayvon Martin case with a videotape. I'm talking about the similarities in the way this whole thing began, but then we see what happens afterwards. Obviously, in the case of George Zimmerman, we don't see. We heard, what he told investigators and what the photos showed, et cetera, and what some of the ear witnesses heard as well. So we got a flavor for what happened. Here, though, you actually have a video. So how much of a difference does that make in the way this case is handled in court, both by prosecutors and defense, and in the way the case is approached and how people will take a look at other parts of the case? Do you know what I mean? Because
sure,
in your trial, in the George Zimmerman case, we didn't see it. Someone had to paint a picture of what we believe may have happened there. Here we see it. So what is the investigation about? What is the defense looking to do? How are we filling in the gaps, and what gaps need to be filled in to figure out the truth here?
Yeah, well, we'll take it from the prosecutor's perspective first. What is the prosecutor going to do? And what they're going to do is say, look, this was a setup by 3 people who had no right to do what they were doing. And I know there's letters out there saying they have the right for a citizen's arrest. We'll get into all that. But basically, from a prosecutor's perspective, you're going to say, here's co-conspirator or uncharged conspirator number 1, the one who's taking the video, watching what Ahmaud was doing, which was just running down the road. And then you have the other 2 people out of their car, one out of the car, one on top of the car, armed, obviously. And when Ahmaud tries to go around the car to avoid the person who has the door open, that's when he comes around the door. And what the prosecutor is going to focus on, I think, is that these people had ill intent, ill will in their minds towards Ahmaud, and they were planning this, and they were going to do whatever, citizen's arrest, with weapons, whatever. Then the prosecutor is going to say they had no absolute right to do it. They overrode their right to do this type of citizen's arrest. Again, remember now the facts are going to come out. They weren't even right in the suggestion that there were a lot of burglaries. One hadn't happened in 5 or 6 or 7 weeks. So that's the prosecutor's perspective. What they're going to say is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we have here is a video that tells you a lot more than these suspects can tell you themselves. It shows you exactly what they were doing, the aggressive nature of what they were doing, and they shouldn't be able to get away with that type of a killing because it's a murder. So that's the prosecution. The defense, what the defense attorneys have to say is, look, these people were law-abiding citizens. They're allowed to carry their guns like that in Georgia. They're allowed to open carry. They were trying to protect their neighborhood. They were trying to protect their public. They knew that there were at least some burglaries in the past, and they had some insight, I'm presuming it's going to come out, that Ahmaud or someone like him was in this house or maybe in a previous house. So what they were saying is, I know the law. I used to be a cop. I was just going to hold him until law enforcement came. And I'll tell you, if they can get across that type of a philosophy to the jury, they may look at a jury, quite honestly, particularly in that area of the country, in that area of Georgia, who might say, I'm allowed to carry my guns and I'm allowed to protect myself. And they're also going to focus on the fact that Ahmaud sort of took that left right after he got past the car. Now, I'm telling you, you point a shotgun at me, I'm not going to wait until you shoot me in the back. I'm probably going to try and disarm you in the spur of the moment. Doesn't justify the shooter, but I think that was what Ahmaud, in the seconds that he had to live, was probably thinking, that these guys are going to shoot and kill me, and he had to do anything he could to try and protect himself.
So looking at this case, right, and the spotlight is on it. You know, you've got the Department of Justice is looking at this case. The world is looking at this case. Both the president and his presumptive opponent is talking about this case. How do the politics of this impact the trial here, or does it?
Oh, I think it does a lot. Let's not forget, if we look at this and look at the similarities to Zimmerman, let's not forget that it was President Obama, and I complained vehemently when he did this, President Obama, who made 2 statements about Trayvon. And I said at that point, you don't have that right. Yeah, I hate to say that, sitting president of the United States, but, the president of the United States cannot come out and say, I like McDonald's more than Burger King. She is supposed to be completely impartial to that. And it was frustrating that President Obama had made some of those statements. I thought it was going to impact on the jury. It was going to impact on the nation. In a case like this, or in an election year, obviously both sides are taking the same tack. Joe Biden, I think, more vocally and aggressively than President Trump. But I think they're both going to come out and say that video shows something that is not to be tolerated. That video looks like it was taken in the 1930s, except we didn't have cell phones back then. And I think the politics are going to make this case stay in the public eye through the election. And anybody who has a misstep, anybody who lacks a sensitivity to what the African-American community is going through still in 2020, we're going to lose a lot of votes because of it.
Final question here before we run out of time, Mark. As we move through this case and we get to the other side, right? This thing will probably stay in Glynn County, right? Because the defense does not want to move out of the conservative Southeast County in Georgia. You got a prosecutor coming up from Metro Atlanta area to try the case. Does that automatically give home field or home court advantage to the defense as we look ahead in this case? Absolutely right, Vinny. Home court advances to the defense right now because it is a rural county where these guys are from. A lot of history, law enforcement in the background. This is going to be a difficult case to pick a jury. They're going to have to be very, very careful how they do that. They're going to get a fair jury who's willing to look at the law and apply it properly. This case has some bumps for both sides, and it's going to be difficult. But you and I both know this is going to get tried day after day after day in the court of public opinion, right through and after the verdict. Mark O'Mara, great to have you on. I appreciate it. I hope you can come back on and talk about this plenty more. We've got a lot is going to develop in this case. Thanks so much, Mark. We'd love to, Benny.